I think we're in a really difficult time. In America, we are facing it looks like a cultural revolution. We're seeing statues being pulled down of historical figures who achieved some very amazing things in American history. But all of that past is being reconstructed, it's being rewritten, and it's being wiped away. And that's a scary thing, because in China, we've seen that happen. And after studying that, what happens after the Cultural Revolution, the CCP wiped away the history, wiped away the culture, and what did they replace it with? With communist culture. And that communist culture is a very scary thing. Where would we go if we can't have freedom here? So it's very important. I come from Australia. I come from a smaller country, smaller population, that does depend on the US's freedom and the US to uphold those freedoms. And if the US doesn't, then it's going to have a huge impact on my own home country and others around the world. We've spent many days interviewing former CCP, Chinese Communist Party officials, to understand what that culture does to an individual and to a society. And they told us themselves that it creates the walking dead. It creates this phenomena where the soul is disconnected from the reality, and you are forced to lie, you are forced to hurt other people, you are forced to always put the party above yourself. And it's almost like George Orwell's, it's really actually quite a lot like George Orwell's novel, quite prophetic, 1984, where you see the party is above everything. And those who are within the CCP, those who are within Orwell's party, those members are the most close and affected by the regime's policies and by that culture, because they're the arms and hands of the regime. They have to carry out the dirty work of the regime, and they have to disconnect their reality and any sense that they have of conscience, of what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false. They have to disconnect that and follow what the party wants. And the party wants to rewrite history. They want to destroy history. They want to pull down statues. They want people to not be able to speak freely. Personally, I think it's fine if people want to debate history. Let people debate history, but don't shut down debate. Don't shut down discussion. Don't shut down culture. And that's what's happening. And I think that's the scariest part of what's happening in America right now, is that debates are being shut down. Things are being polarized to such an extreme. And this is a communist tactic, to put things to such an extreme where there is no middle ground. It's left or right. And then one will just, the aim then is for one to destroy the other. We saw that in the Soviet Union. Gulags came from that. We've seen that in China. The labor camp, Laogai system came from that. I really don't think we want that here. There may be some people who think that we're not heading in that direction, that it will be different here, but it has never been different anywhere else. Any other country that's tried this system, always, the people who were in power never let it go. And killing and dehumanization, terrible hurt towards people is the result.
A former journalist for the Chinese Communist Party, YIFEI Wang, living in exile in San Francisco, struggles to settle into life in America while working to heal her family's wounds from their tragic past. She's seeking justice for the murder of her sister at the hands of the Chinese authorities. Rare undercover footage of a meeting with the director of a labor camp where YIFEI's sister was killed revealed shocking admissions of torture, slave labor, corruption, and a general disregard for human life, pervading the camp system today.
What they experienced is really just the tip of the iceberg of what so many people in China have experienced. But they
their experience really touches upon so many different aspects of the persecution and how the CCP treats its citizens so brutally. So we felt this was a really important story to tell. And I hope that everyone can come and watch this movie, and especially NTD TV audiences. We think you'll really enjoy it and you'll learn from it. And it's something that you can sit and watch with your family. And there's tragedy in there, but there's also a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration.
My family has been persecuted by communism for many, since 1918, when the Soviet Russians took over Russia. My family had to escape just to be able to survive, and they were very lucky they survived. Many didn't. And then they went to China, where my father grew up, and lived there for 14 years. He went through really horrifying times, and the Great Famine in China, which was not great. Many of my family were there during that time, and they were lucky to survive. I have aunts and uncles that didn't survive that time because of the conditions caused by the CCP in that famine. And then they came to Australia because they were no longer able to survive under communism in China. And my husband's family also escaped communism in the former Czechoslovakia. So I feel quite connected to this cause, and seeing firsthand myself, I was arrested and imprisoned in China, put into a basement prison cell in the Tiananmen Square police station, simply because I held a banner that said truth, compassion, tolerance, Zhen Shanren. And those 3 words, I was told, are illegal in China. And I was put into prison. But imagine what happens to Chinese people. I had an Australian passport, and they didn't treat me very brutally, but I can only imagine what they do to Chinese people for holding a banner with those 3 words. And it's really shocking. For those 3 words, the treatment that they gave to me was horrifying. What they do to Chinese people for standing up for those 3 words is much, much worse. People ask, what can I do? And one thing is, well, we've got to be educated. That's why we make movies, because it helps people look at the issues, learn some information, come to their own conclusions. When you learn from someone's story, especially a true story, what's going on in the world, then you can really come to your own conclusions about, well, what would I do if I was in that scenario? What would I do if I was that person? And I think the stories that we've done on human rights in China, they've come to the same conclusion, is how do we change this horrific situation? And how to do that is really to distance ourselves from the CCP. The CCP is not going to change. Most of the victims in these movies that we've made, at some point they always were waiting for the CCP to change. And maybe with a new leader it would be different. Maybe there would be some reforms, things would be different. And the more they lived it and the more they studied it, they came to the same conclusions. And these are people from all over China in all different levels of the society, is that the CCP has not changed. It's not going to change its nature, and we have to step away from it. And no one thought that the Berlin Wall would fall. My in-laws were living in Czechoslovakia, and they escaped communism there because no one ever imagined that the Berlin Wall was going to fall. If they had known just a few years later it was going to fall, they would have stayed in their homeland. They wouldn't have left. But just a few years later, the whole communism collapsed in the former Czechoslovakia, and there was freedom. So things like that happen. People look at China and think nothing's going to change. The CCP is too powerful, too strong, but it's just not true. When things need to change, they will, and we have to have that hope. I really believe that. But to make that happen, we have to get clear in ourselves, get informed, get aware, get educated, and keep an open mind. Don't just listen from one source. Open your mind and look around. The facts are all there. CCP is the biggest killer in modern history. There is no bigger killer. It's not going to change. It's never been held to account for its crimes, and it has to be. So really, there's been millions of people that have stepped away from the CCP. The Chinese people have been doing it for a number of years. And it is an astounding grassroots movement, the fact that they're doing this. And I think we can do the same. And I think we should. We've seen what the virus has done to our world this year because of the CCP's policies to lie. They allowed it to continue and spread around the world. We should also distance ourselves. What people are suffering in Hong Kong right now is really shocking. They're the latest victims of the CCP's suppression. And we need to stand up with the people of Hong Kong in solidarity. We need to recognize what they're going through and help support them so that they can get through this and regain their dignity as individuals, as people, as a nation, without the suppression of the CCP, because we know from history that CCP is not going to get better. It has not changed in all this time. We cannot expect it to change. We really have to stand with the Hong Kong people. My heart goes out to everyone in Hong Kong. Please stay strong. Please keep going with everything you're doing. The youth there are such an inspiration, the way they have just gone forward to really inspire the people of Hong Kong, but the people of the world, and their families who are supporting them, and the rest of the people in Hong Kong. I think they're really looking to the younger generation, and that's the inspiration, I think, of the people of Hong Kong, that this is where the future is, and these are the future of Hong Kong, and they are amazing, astounding people, and we need to support them because they will become the future leaders in Asia and beyond. And I really believe they will get through, but they need all of our support and effort to help them do it in this really, really difficult time. So